second was like, I mean, my father and I got incredibly emotional. The cancer, in some ways, bizarrely, was a relief. I do not know how you do it. Still remember asking my father, when are you going to die? A little bit left, I'd say.
Yeah, just a touch.
Right, okay.
Good shot. You grew up with a very famous father in three-time Formula One world champion, Jackie Stewart. At what point did you realise my dad's different to the other dads?
For example, I guess Sean Connery coming to pick me up at school with my mother, actually on a Rolls Royce that was on loan. And my mother and Sean arrived, and it became this avalanche of people all around the car wanting to see Sean. And then also, I think, the headmaster wrote a letter afterwards about the commotion that it caused. The elders treated me different to people of my own age, kids my own age. And I guess that was because of my father's success. So, you know, I used to sit next to my mother cutting out things about my father in newspapers. So that was all part of me knowing that, you know, there was something special about him, other than just being a good father.
Growing up as the son of a racing driver in the 60s and 70s, death was all around you. How big of a part did death play in your childhood?
Very present, but not in a way that was consciously felt tragic. It just felt, oh, there's another one gone. But I also knew that my father was doing the same thing as them. So subconsciously, I think it must have had an effect, because I was going to school with Jochen Rindt's daughter, Natasha, and then the Joe Bonier's two boys, Kim and Jonas. And one of the boys said to me one day, after their father got killed in '72, on the school bus, your dad's going to be next. And they weren't being nasty, but I just was like, okay, he must be, because they've gone. So that night, I still remember asking my father, looking up at him and said, Daddy, when are you going to die? And it was just, for me, a legitimate question. So it sounds dramatic, but I didn't think of it that way, but it must have had an effect of some sorts.
Ooh, good try, unlucky. Good shot. In 1997, you formed Stuart Grand Prix with your father. What sparked the idea to start a Formula One team?
Well, I wouldn't say it was so much an idea as what became the starting point for going that way. And that was me stopping racing, telling my father at the end of '94, I want to stop racing and I want to concentrate on Paul Stewart racing, and we'd work together all the way through. So it seemed logical to have a target: German touring cars, Indy cars, British Touring Car Championship, or Formula One. But Formula One being the dream. So that started really at the end of '94. And then we started putting proposals together during '95. Got Ford to accept it in '96. And then it was, well, actually it was in '95. So it was a really quick process. And '96 was the build-up year, '97 started to race.
So from kind of the initial idea actually to kind of it becoming a reality of having a Formula One team, it's quite a quick turnaround. Incredibly
quick. Well, we had done an awful lot with Paul Stewart Racing, and so people knew what we were doing as Paul Stewart Racing. We had been successful, and they had been to our factories. It wasn't like we just arrived and said, we're doing a Formula One team. It just seemed a logical progression of the same company, really, but we just called it Stuart Grand Prix. And it was only fair, rather than call it Paul Stewart Racing and Formula One. So that was it, and it was incredibly quick.
Great shot, really good. What would a season in Formula One cost Stuart Grand Prix in the 90s?
The first season, we had about £19 million.
19
and a half, I think it was, if I remember correctly now. And then by the time 99 was, I remember in dollars, was $60 million, or whatever that was in pounds, 60, 65, around there, because we're entitled TV money because we'd finished the top three in 2 out of 3 years. So we knew we're kicking into...
Finished in the top three in...
the World Championship.
Right.
We'd finished fourth in the Constructors' Championship in 99, but we'd scored points in 97 by finishing second in Monaco. And then Canada, we got a fifth and sixth. And that time was either points only for the first 6 places. So a championship point meant a lot. And so that meant we'd definitely qualify for TV money.
Which
two out
was
of 3
big
years.
for a small team like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was made a big difference to us.
Yeah.
Everyone else getting a lot of more money
Yeah.
and selling spaces on the car, maybe at a more marketable rate to get the deal.
So running a team with your father, what were your different roles that you both had in the team?
I say I had the easy job, he had the difficult one. He was responsible for finding the money, and I was responsible for hiring the people and create the structure in the team.
Can you remember the best and worst moments you had running Stewart Grand Prix?
Well, best for me was finishing second in Monaco.
Over the 99
Yeah.
European Grand Prix?
Yeah, oddly
When?
enough, because it was Monte Carlo, it was Monaco, in front of Prince Rainier and Prince Albert, and it's the glamour of Monaco, and we didn't qualify that well, but Rubens drove a hell of a race and decided to go for intermediates from the beginning. The clever teams decided to go in some slicks and other stuff, and Rubens just went, and Jan should have finished sixth, so second was like, I mean, my father and I got incredibly emotional. He got emotional before I did, and then I got emotional. Most emotional moment I've ever had with my father, and probably intense from a professional father experience, when we were just sharing a moment that was something that we had created together. It's very powerful.
On the flip side, the worst?
There were many moments, but I think I could pick a couple, and I think the one I would choose would be probably the end of '96, when the money wasn't coming in as fast as we thought it would do in time for the '97 championship. And at one point, I was getting on the plane to go to Macau for the Formula 3 race. I called my father and said, "Look, Daddy, if you don't get the money in, if you need to pull out, you've got my support. You know, don't do it, because I don't want you putting any of your money in or that kind of stuff." Went to Macau, we won the race with Ralph Furman, felt great. But for some reason, the contracts got signed shortly after that. I have no idea where that went. That's like a hell of a shot, Lucas.
Oh, great putt. Nice, good putt. Ooh. We're gonna do some quick fire questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind and then just blurt it out. First memory at a racetrack.
Brands Hatch, 1971, October 6th.
Favorite F1 livery of all time.
John Player Special.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
John Lennon.
Favorite helmet design.
François Sever.
What's the hardest decision you had to make in motorsport?
File a complaint with the European Commission against Bernie.
Give me your F1 dream team, 2 drivers and 1 team principal.
Ron Dennis, Lando, and Oscar.
What's the most you paid one of your drivers?
Eddie was on a 3-year contract, 7, 7, and 8.
If you were running a team today, who would be the first person you'd hire?
Technical director, tough call between Rob Marshall and James Allison.
Give me your Mount Rushmore of Formula One, your top 4 drivers of all time.
I've got to put my father there. Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, François Sever. I do not know how you do it.
Yeah, good shot. That's good. At the end of the 1999 season, you decided to sell Stewart Grand Prix to Ford Motor Company. Why?
Well, we weren't for sale, but Ford approached us and said they were interested because they wanted to own a Formula One team and rebrand it as Jaguar. It was earlier than we thought an opportunity like that would come along. We were in a strong position as well because we had a 5-year contract with Ford and we were 3 years in. We weren't for sale, but they came along and they made an offer which was going to materially change my life. And I wasn't running away from it. I was meant to be carrying on running the operations
With Jaguar.
as Jaguar Racing. So it was a good opportunity for the team to reach the dream that what my father and I had started off with.
So you're 34 years old, seemingly on top of the world, you're married with 3 kids, you've got money in your pocket, but then your world gets flipped upside down as you're diagnosed with a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you go from being on top of the world to essentially fighting for your life. What was that like?
The cancer, in some ways, bizarrely, was a relief because I was committed to doing a job and I would have done that job to the best of my ability, i.e. continue to run Jaguar racing. But it's been an intense period for us. And so it gave me having an excuse, if you like, to step away and worry about my life, knowing that there was an element of financial security.
Good shot. You were very close to George Harrison from a young age. What's the best piece of advice you got from a Beatle?
Learn to live life and to, dig deep and appreciate the miracle of life.
How did that friendship start?
My father, they met each other at the Long Beach Grand Prix, I think in like 78 or something like that. And then I remember my brother and I going to Friar Park to meet George for lunch one day. And I was just like, I wasn't even really a big fan of the Beatles.
And he was a guest of Stewart Grand Prix at some Grand Prix, right? He would come and...
Yeah, absolutely. George, you knew the effect that you'd have. So even Paul Stewart Racing, you'd come on the grid just to stand by the car. This is and it just felt great, he loved racing. And in fact, the only person that would call the house at 11 o'clock at night, phone would ring, invariably, it'd be George. I'd always pick up the phone, it'd be George calling, how's things going? He knew he'd be under pressure for some reason. We'd just sit and chat for a while. It was always full of humour. And then that was it. So I love him and miss him.
Just a bit too far. It's a good putt though. Oh, I've left it short.
Yes!
That is awful.
Right, go on, put it in now.
Thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. Thank you. Trying to interview a dad is tough. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I've got a few really interesting guests coming up. And be on the lookout for the next video. I'll see you guys soon.